to the point where we have access to my folder, I think we might have. I just think people say, feel like I'm at home. Somebody, yeah,
Media mic is on.
My understanding is.
Probably wise.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Hang on. I've obviously got a problem with my password here. It's not sure. Did you change passwords here? Okay.
So Paul, where were you?
Maybe it just needs didn't some.
St. Paul. Oh, did you go to the basketball game as well? Amongst everything else you went there?
No, I was with the grandkids on Saturday.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Paisley Park Sunday afternoon.
I don't know Paisley Park.
That's Prince's place.
Of course, yes. Yes.
You're in down there now?
He's still there.
Okay.
He's still
Still lives. Go to jazz brunch on Sunday at Hell's Kitchen?
no.
That's a really, it really is good. Hell's Kitchen down there. Good basketball.
Very.
As long as it doesn't go far, less traveled.
I only walked out my back door to the garage bar next
Wow.
door, so.
Is that Gondex?
Yeah, I went about 40
Yeah, you're
yards.
able to-
We can talk.
Were they licensed?
Soccer fields from here in Minneapolis and St.
Yeah.
Louis, but.
I wasn't sad when my kids said, "Nah, Dad, we're done with soccer."
Mine just sent me a text message and told me that don't come into his room. He's on his meeting.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Without the follow-up, that just makes you want to go into the room all that much more.
Thanks, buddy.
You know, Scott, something you taught me in Parks and Rec when we were on the board together, you used to always do this with your, all the time. And so now I learned how to do it because I watched you do it for so long, and it actually gives you something to do while you're sitting. What's that?
I'm trying to do it.
It took me a little bit to learn, but I'm telling you, I learned it from you, watching.
I learned to do that in ninth grade science, Mr. Bellamy's class. I learned that and how to juggle. That's what I got out of science class.
Well, that's great. Well, you taught me how to
Nice
turn
skills.
your pen on that.
So, and I in fact went on to teach a juggling class for Parks and Rec.
Well, that's
Like
nice.
15.
Aw.
Our entire front porch was full of tennis
It
balls
comes
and
full
kids running
circle.
around.
Have you talked to Matt Sider yet? I want to hire you.
I see
Yeah,
a
I was just
program
gonna
here.
say, way to turn that scar into a star.
What was your grade in science?
Oh,
It's a marketing statement.
That
right?
was,
Yeah.
that was also this, that was the same.
I'm gonna use that
one.
one.
On the day of the parent teacher conferences.
The recency principle there.
After all that work.
You did a really good job,
Got it
though.
all plugged in.
You did a great job.
Yeah, 10 weeks.
I know.
Notice we're pushing you back as far as we can so nobody goes like
So
Yeah,
all the way back.
we're gonna be show, they're gonna be bolted to the wall.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Little shelved.
Nice.
Doug, you sent us something this afternoon.
Yep. For next council meeting, that's not for today.
Good, because
No.
after supper tonight, I was forwarding it to a different email,
Yep.
and it didn't come through, so I was
No.
thinking if we were gonna talk about that, I'm gonna run out and get my phone.
No, March 20th.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
And Doug, since it's 6:30, are we okay?
We are okay, nobody online.
Okay, it is 6:30. I want to officially call this meeting to order, the first meeting in March for the City of Mount Vernon City Council. And with the call to order, are there any agenda additions, or otherwise I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Number 2.
Yeah. What, you got something to add there? We already got a motion on the floor.
Number 2, under motions for approval, we'll move to another meeting. There's a issue with us.
So we're dropping J2, that is the motion that is, that change in the agenda. Any other changes to the agenda? If we're ready to vote on the approval of the agenda, all in favor of the motions, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is the open communications time of the meeting. If anybody's here, talk to any topic that is not on, that is, tonight's meeting agenda. Anybody here to speak? We'll move on to consent agenda. We have one item, that is the approval of last meeting's minutes. Any questions or concerns about that? Thank you, Deb.
I will second.
And Ms. Deb. Catch that, Marcia? We're going to vote on the approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to G1. Construction bids. We got a recommendation, I believe.
Resolution would be to reject all bids. The bid from the one bidder came in $131,000 above engineer's estimate with the alternative. I did speak with Dave Scheckinger on Friday while I was traveling. We have kind of circled back and decided that the best way to move forward would be to rebid to reduce the requirements for the actual building itself, because that building was $100,000 over their estimate too. So they specified a pre-engineered building model, and the cost was obviously significantly higher. So the proposal, when it comes back in front of you, will be to break the electrical, so the lighting in its own package, and then the rest of the remainder of the project in another package, and then loosen or give more freedom, I would say, to that building and see what happens from there.
Wasn't that originally when Matt proposed this, he did it in 2 phases?
So
And then we kind of came together and said, let's just do it all now.
Yeah.
We pushed it.
the lighting component is the most important for him. It elongates the time and the number of months that he's able to utilize that facility. So his push would be to get the lights done, and it may be easier for us. We may get better pricing if an electrician doesn't necessarily have to be a subcontractor. So there's not a general that's trying to find a sub. So we had luck rebidding other projects this year. We're going to try again, and like I said, I think the building package, if they can stick build something versus having a pre-engineered structure, might actually help the numbers as well.
So we wouldn't reduce necessarily the square footage of the facility itself,
No.
but just the way they have to build it, is all of that.
I was struck by this when I was reading it, Paul's comment last week, 2 weeks ago, and saying it is rare when bids go down, but they tend to go up again, and that was a $97,000 difference, this is a $131,000 difference, so it's quite a bit higher, it's 20% higher than last week. I'm just curious, Paul, what do you think?
So, based on my experience, the recommendation of breaking it apart is a very good one, because when you can eliminate the need, as Chris said, to have the general contractor, subcontracting pieces out. The other benefit is, with the lighting being the need, the largest need, that gives us the option, if those bids do again come in, I would expect that the bids, if there is going to be a difference, it wouldn't be higher on the electrical, because that's sort of more of a standard cost items. And the changing and allowing for variance in materials of the building will have, I believe, an opportunity for driving down some of that cost. So I'm strongly in favor of the recommendation from the engineer and Chris.
And hopefully by doing so, we get more than one bid as well. And
That's
that might
the
be
other, that's
issue.
the other part.
Breaking it up.
Break it out, yeah.
I had talked to, at least one local contractor who stated that they had intended to bid, and if you look at, the contractors that took out packages, the number is fairly staggering. By loosening, or being less specific, I think we might entice some of those contractors back. It did, indicate to Matt though, the date might be the other issue, the hard start, hard end date, so he may have to be more flexible, in his scheduling to allow better pricing in order to get this project done as well, so.
Remind me why Matt had the hard struck.
It really just, so that there wasn't any disruption in sequence.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I would, in terms of that, I believe that we've in the past, when we've had various issues with, I mean, let's all remember that Elliott Park was never designed to be a park. It was designed to be a stormwater detention area in heavy weather events, and through the vision of our former mayor and a lot of people in the community, it is one of our most used facilities. And oftentimes we can, for short periods of time or for a season, we can make do with those kinds of adjustments. So I would agree with Chris on that as well, that opening that up would make a difference.
The staff recommendation is to reject a resolution. Usually resolutions take a roll call vote.
Mm.
Do we still need a roll call vote?
Yes, my
Reject?
preference is so that there's a formal action on the current bid, so that allows us, or opens the door for us to
Okay.
value engineer the package.
So with that, I would move resolution 3-6-2023A, rejecting the award of all construction bids for the Davis Park Improvement Project.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Paul and Deb. The motion on the floor to reject the award of construction bids for the Davis Park Improvement Project, and that is going to be just a roll call. Marcia?
Trevor,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Engel,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Motion to reject is passed. Motions for approval. First item is the claims list. Agenda amended one came out this afternoon, I believe. Any questions, Marcia, regarding that process? I will entertain a motion for the claims list.
so moved.
Steph?
Second.
Okay, Scott. The motion on the floor to approve the claims list. We're ready to vote on that? No questions? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're skipping J2, we're on to J3, First Street Streetscape Study.
So this project, I think was initially discussed through the CIP when we started talking about some of the big ticket items, projects that are hanging out there. My belief is that we completed the South Alley project, and I think generally speaking, CDG kind of had an idea that we would maybe move to the North Alley project. Next, we were just waiting on kind of our cash intake and the local option sales tax for the downtown to rebuild itself. From staff's perspective, I would recommend that we move forward with the study of First Street for two major reasons. Number one, the amount of time that needs to be taken with the consultant, whoever we decide to hire, is at a minimum probably of 12 to 18 months. We need to have plenty of discussion with downtown businesses, some of who are just recuperating from COVID. So that's kind of priority number one. But if you have walked that 4 o'clock area, it's not getting any better. And so we have some avenues that we can pursue here. We can do what has been done before in the past, we can put a Band-Aid on it, we can rip the asphalt up and put another overlay on and call it good for a little while. We can do a full reconstruction. It's probably the wisest use of taxpayer dollars, but it's also the most expensive and then the most disruptive. So, currently, there's about $180,000 in the local option sales tax for the downtown. What I believe we could do is RFP with the main focus on the 4-block area of the down the Main Street, but maybe incorporate that North Alley into the conversation when we hire the consultant, with that being a secondary component of the project. The only thing with the North Alley is it's a little bit more complicated than the south, because there are people that access and there are vendors that use that for deliveries. So, should the council see fit to take on one more of those glaring projects that's kind of hanging out there, then I would probably give this project to Lori and let her kind of run with it. So, 180,000 should definitely more than cover an engineering study for this project, but there's probably no time like the present to at least get it started. The old concept is, I want to say at least 12, if not 15 years old at this point. So while it,
For the North Alley?
the whole thing, it's not as if I want to scrap that. I mean, they can always reference that for design components, but a lot has changed.
Yeah.
We've had outdoor seating, parking is always an issue. So I think it's best if we just start with a new firm, fresh faces, and spend the next 12 to 18 months trying to come up with a plan and what that's going to cost. So similar to what we're doing with the pool right now, having them bring us options and make an educated decision after that.
I do like including the North Alley discussion as part of the plan, because of the amount of destruction that we're going to be going through and disruption to the businesses. I think it's smart for us to see if it's best for us to plan to do them at the same time.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this and talking to some folks, we've talked about shutting down one lane, shutting down both lanes, different options, and one of the options that somebody mentioned to me was, and I don't know what it looks like necessarily for us, but that kind of prompted wanting to have this conversation was, a community had to do the same thing, but most of their businesses had access from the alleys behind. And I know many of ours do as well. And so if I think about those, plus the access that both the North and South Alley provide halfway through each of those blocks, I'm hoping that we can help ease the pain that this will cause for our downtown businesses. Because it's gonna be a pain one way or the other. But if we can make it as less a pain as possible and help them through it, I think we've done our due diligence.
Sounds like many of you here on the council are familiar with whatever the consultant wrote up 10, 12 years ago. I've not seen that. It'd be helpful to see that.
Is that the streetscape plan that was funded?
Is it online?
Out of the city? It was on the site. It was on the site.
It was removed due to age.
Okay.
We have a plan that
When it can drive, we take them all.
we can make available. The one issue that I had with the plan is based upon the time frame being 10, 15 years ago. The subsurface and the water sewer lines were obviously old, but still newer than they are today. We probably reached the point where some of those sewer lines are probably 40 plus years old. Or better. Sometimes it's easier, in my position not to tackle all of these big jobs all at once, but they're not gonna get done if we don't. So,
Yeah, I'm not opposed to any of this, I just want to see the whole one.
yeah,
Just
it's,
to get you up to speed.
it's, I will say it was the same firm that we hired for the South Alley project. I will not recommend using them again, just based upon some of the experiences, but the plan itself, there's components of it that I think make a lot of sense. The original designer actually works for another engineering firm in the state now too, so I'm sure they would be interested in looking at it, but, yeah, the question in front of council is, the work that it takes to create an RFP is only worth it if this is a project that you see worthwhile. And if it is, then we would start on an RFP and that would kick off the entire process. So Lori would create an RFP, we would approve it, set it out, and then we go through the interview process, but,
Either way, we're over a year away from starting anything,
oh, yeah.
correct? And which would allow for another year of healing financially for the downtown folks that got hit hard during the pandemic.
I would say, from my perspective, so you have two really large projects potentially out there. This is easily if it's a full reconstruction, is easily a $2 million project, right? And then you have the pool that the consultant will be coming to you and just showing you the recommendations. But based upon that, I mean, we're not gonna be able to borrow those types of projects for at least 2 or 3 years, probably maybe 3 or 4. So now is the time to maybe get all of the planning done and then allow you as the council an opportunity to decide at that point, which one's the priority. Either way, we're gonna have to borrow for both.
And is it true that either way, your recommendation would be to do the study anyway? Either
Yes.
do it now or do it in?
Yeah, we have, again, when you have the cash on hand, and we don't necessarily have any pressure, now would be the time to have that conversation.
Oh, and I think the criticality of the infrastructure underneath the street, anybody that's ever dug a hole to do anything in the ground knows that you don't know what's there until you've dug the hole. And we have had success in some of our major street projects doing the full reconstruction. The Fifth Avenue Hill south part, I think, is one of the best examples of, it costs more up front, but a year in, you're not cracking up new concrete to replace broken water lines. And I also like the ability for an in-depth study without a rush. It's always better to do this before we have to, because when you have to, you don't always look at it.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this has the potential to go to 3, if not 4 different commissions of the city. So you have historic preservation that's in the historic district, so you have planning, zoning, this body, so, and then CDG. So I mean, there's a lot of moving components, and I would not be at all surprised if this RFP was in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $200,000, to get it right. There's gonna be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of meetings, that, normally they put like 4 or 5 in their tops, but I probably triple that this month.
I kind of, when I think of an analogy for this, it's almost like we've got a building and we're going to remove the old basement and put in a new basement. Because that, in essence, we want to retain all of those structures and businesses because they are the heart of our town, while upgrading those elements that need upgrade. So with that, I would move approval of doing an RFP for the First Street streetscape study.
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul and staff. This council and the staff has not got tough issues, whether it's changing garbage providers or wanting to get in there, everybody's home and install new water meters, so why would they change the pattern anymore here? It's an opportunity to impact every downtown business and a year's worth of festival, so there's what we're
Why
after.
not?
Motion on the floor to go to a streetscape study on First Street project. And if we're ready to vote on that, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The other part of this is that we might finally answer some rumors
Yeah.
about what is underneath that street.
You think of a body, you don't know.
Yeah.
As identified in the plans.
You know what it is, you know. And Chris, I'd like to talk to Bill.
I was gonna say, yeah, just as a reminder, if we could all get one.
So it's electronically.
I'm familiar with it,
Unless
but I
you
know
don't
it's.
like
No, regardless, I think we can
Yeah.
scan it in, if I don't have an electronic version, we can scan it.
Yeah, refresh.
Yeah, that'd be
There are a lot of good components, but that previous plan is just, it's definitely outdated.
Next item for motion is for approval is discussion and consideration of setting a public hearing date, April 17th, 2023, to consider the city of Mount Vernon fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget. Council action is needed. Any changes, any comments? You had a comment once about the impact of legislation that's impacting us, like 50 to 100,000. Have you clarified that number anymore? Or?
$47,500.
Okay, so you've got a hard number for that. Okay, thank you.
And that's just in this next fiscal year, correct?
This is that would be the ramifications of the correction on the rollback that,
That they discovered in October and then sat on until now. Clarify.
It was election time, finish, right?
Yeah, yeah, that one.
my recommendation is, I have
Is this
never,
the third time you've pushed this?
I know, I've never, when I was putting this on the agenda, I'm like, I rarely do I feel this bad about feeling unprepared. This would be the third and final. They did give us an extra 30 days in order to put our budgets together. I got the number today from Brad, so it's just over 47,500, I think. My suggestion to you, because we had already planned on increasing the levy rate by 16 cents, is to not make any more changes, and 47,000 is not a steep enough number that I would feel comfortable just doing a one-time dip into reserves for this fiscal year. Other bills won't necessarily impact us to this nature, quite like this. So I mean, we should have further heads up if they're gonna make any more significant changes to property tax. So this isn't $47,000 every year. It's just happens to be this year.
Well, with that being said, I would move approval of setting the public hearing for the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget to our April 17th meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott Gray. Further questions or comments? Otherwise, we're ready to vote on that motion. For approval, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Reports to be received and filed. Historic Preservation Commission Annual Report. Thank you for sending that out in advance, is that?
Sure. On the back of that mic, there's a button on the top. You can just push that, the light should turn green. Well, I guess, actually, don't worry about it, there's nobody online anyway. Never mind.
And Nathan's not online.
Scratch that.
Nathan, this is a meeting, I can't believe it.
No name?
He's here virtually.
Oh.
Okay, well, thanks for being here for my report. I'd like to note that my valued colleague Guy Booth, Commission, is here. And I'd like to express thanks for more than 32 years of support for historic preservation in Mount Vernon. In a whole lot of ways, you've offered your support. The written report that I'm sending to the state, the two narrative sections, were in your council packet. You can blame the commission for its length because they elected a former college professor to do the work, and I like to go on. So I'll just go on some of the high points and make an addition today. One of the first things I wanted to say is that we have a really engaged and committed commission. We had two people join us this year who sought us out. They noticed in our newsletter that we had openings. They said, I'd like to serve. One is a county building inspector, and that expertise is really important. One is a social media and marketing expert, and that expertise is really important for us. We also have felt over the years that it would be really important to have some representation from a retail business owner, because our town district is a historic district, and we like to know how decisions we make might affect that. We were really lucky in that Sherry Brayton was really willing to join us. She owns the building where her shop is, and she and her husband have redone their own house in Lisbon, so she knows a lot about historic preservation and can offer that perspective. Probably our biggest accomplishment of this year was getting the visitor center on the National Register of Historic Places. That was kind of complicated because it was moved into the college district after it was already formed. And so it wasn't eligible for individual listing. We checked that out with the state first, and we said no. And Leah Rogers worked with them on what would work, and they suggested that we amend the Cornell College district, and that way that building could be added to the district. And also other places that were either demolished, were taken off the list, and ones that were added to the list. So we now have an updated map of the Cornell College Historic District. Now that the visitor center is on the National Register, it's eligible for some grants that it wouldn't have been eligible for otherwise. In particular, there's a state grant called the Historic Resource Development Program, offers up to $50,000 of funding. And so we are hoping, if everything comes together for us, we're hoping to submit a grant. I talked with Chris about matching money for that grant. There's some money that the city can put in for matching, and so we might be able to get $10,000 or more from the state. So I think that'll be helpful. We did a preservation plan for the building in 2020 that listed all the needs of it and all the things that could be improved, and we're basing our work on that. Probably it'll be mostly the masonry on the outside of the building. As you've noticed, number one, it's dirty. And number two, the tuck pointing is in bad shape. Some is filled in with caulk. Also, the roof caps need end caps on them, so insects and critters don't go up the roof. Also, again, this weekend, there'll be some opportunities for you to possibly learn who's buried under the streets in Mount Vernon. The play Treasure is one that we commissioned the script for it last year, and we got a gift from a foundation that's allowing us to fund the production this year. So they'll be showing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this week, and one of the topics is who's buried in the main street. I saw a staged reading of it, but I haven't seen the final play yet, so I'm really looking forward to it. And there's a little Mount Vernon birthday party afterwards. They arranged for cake from White Tree Bakery. So there's a little treat at the end as well. One of our big projects for the last several years has been to look at the cemetery. If you haven't been there for a while, there are lots of stones that are broken, tipped over, misaligned, and we've been really concerned about that for a while. Again, 2 years ago, while Leah Rogers was chair, we commissioned a study of the cemetery, and they gave us some prices for repair of stones and so forth. But the cemetery is currently governed only by the city, and there was some feeling that it might be helpful to have a cemetery board. Most cemeteries apparently have a board that kind of governs their operation. And so we've talked a number of times with Chris. We also conferred with the Friends of Oakshade Cemetery in Marion, and found out how their group is organized. Guy's been working on some articles of incorporation that might be adopted. Apparently those are currently with the city attorney. So we're hoping that at some point, we might be able to propose to you a Friends of the Mount Vernon Cemetery group that might do a whole range of things, including arrange for funding for repair of stones, with maintenance issues and so forth. So that's something that's still underway. Probably will take a couple more years, I would guess. We did some preservation awards this year. One of the things that we like to do is have a carrot for people doing the right thing with their properties. And this was an opportunity for people to see the kinds of great work that people have done in their homes and businesses in Mount Vernon. We gave 12 awards, both commercial and residential, for a variety of things. Our hardest job is design review. So we have design guidelines that we have in fact updated in 2 ways this year. And that's kind of our hardest job because property owners come to us with proposals. We do our best to work with them in advance. So we provide them with as much consultation as they'd like, as much information as they might like. We do our work on a case-by-case basis, so we consider what have they proposed to us, what might best serve their needs and our needs. We made a rare denial this year, and as you well know, that was not popular with a person who was trying to sell a lot. So we denied a duplex that would be low to moderate income housing. We felt we needed to do that because there were no modifications that could be made to the design. It was not going to fit in the historic district. And we really didn't have, there was such a short time frame that we really couldn't do anything. And the budget didn't allow. The developer noted that the lot was very expensive and the income from the property would be relatively low. So there wasn't any wiggle room with regard to that. So we were regretful to do that, but it was something we felt we had to do. And at least one neighbor has indicated that they felt we did the right thing in that. Future plans, of course, as I mentioned, the Friends of the Mount Vernon Cemetery group. We have 2 workshops scheduled for this fiscal year. The first will be on April 15th. It'll be on historic gardening, done by Lynn County Master Gardener, and then another one on May 20th on house painting, and that will cover paint colors and techniques of painting. The Mount Vernon Historic Preservation Design Guidelines are from the 1990s. They do not cover modern materials really at all. And they also have some shortcomings in terms of not describing the architecture of Mount Vernon, which many design guidelines do. So property owners can look at a property like theirs and say, okay, mine's a Queen Anne, Victorian. Here are the things that would work on that. Also, our design guidelines aren't very specific to the architectures in Mount Vernon, so they're kind of sketchy in that regard. Not sketchy in the sense of being poor, but sketchy in terms of being limited. So we would like to update those. We require the assistance of a professional in doing that. None of us have the expertise to really do this ourselves. Ed Sauter did our first design guidelines in the 1990s. We would need to hire somebody to do that for us. So we would like to write another grant again if it comes together. This grant is going in August. We would do the match from our annual budget rather than asking the city for funds. And I would submit a certified local government grant. So those grants are due in August. And then for the Visitor Center, as I mentioned, we're doing an HRBP grant for the Visitor Center to get some of the projects on that preservation plan done.
Sue, thank you. You apologize for the length of the report, but it was very thorough and appreciated.
I am grateful for the information on looking at updating. One of my concerns as I was researching various issues that were raised was the fact that the documentation is very dated in terms of, technology and materials and those types of things. 20 years is a short period of time these days. And so I'm grateful to hear that that is happening, and frankly, I would be in favor, not speaking for anyone else up here, but I would certainly be in favor of offering financial support if it's needed.
Okay,
I think it's that important,
yes.
because we have a large part of our community as historic districts. And if we don't give you the tools to be able to keep up, your volunteers, it's greatly appreciated. I've been a volunteer myself, Parks and Rec, and I know the difficulty that when you want to do the right thing, but you don't have the right tools. So I'm very in favor of any support that we can give you to help everyone. So
And-
thank you.
And we won't know the cost until we send out an RFP.
Right.
And so what we're working toward right now is, we'll get to that. We're talking about our procedures right now and making some changes in those. But we'll have a list of things that we want to add to our design guidelines, and that will inform our RFP. And I think we'll probably start to do that maybe in April or May.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for that.
Keep up the good work with the newsletter.
Oh,
I
thanks.
really appreciate reading through that.
Great, great. We will continue.
Engaged, professional historic preservation commission is so important, so keep it going.
Yeah, they're great. They're wonderful. And we really appreciate it when you came and thanked us for service. That meant a lot to us.
It was easy to do, you had a heavy agenda that morning, I was glad to get out of there.
Sometimes I do that too.
I know, but, are we late for that one? Thank you both.
Thanks to both of you.
Thank you, guys.
Please pass on thank you to the entire commission.
Yeah, I'll convey that.
Under discussion items, we have our CIP budget, again, it's kind of a placeholder, anything to add, change, question, Chris, on?
Take a deep breath until the state adjourns.
That's the first model. Moving on then to reports, Mayor, Council Administrator, Mayor's report. Mention 4 things. First of all, thanks to Alex for providing some information to Dave, our city engineer, to provide to Lynn County Sustainability Coordinator, Mayor Marcus, for a study that she was doing that involved waste, water treatment plant emissions. It's part of a bigger countywide project, and I saw my eyes glazed over, so I passed it on to Alex and then to the city engineer. Yeah, so thank you guys, those two, for doing that. Second thing is, this week there should be some good publicity for the city of Mount Vernon and the Sun, and then maybe shortly after that the Gazette. Third thing is, April 1st is. Sounds like another county engagement where Mount Vernon is hosting Lynn County Sustainability on environmental justice and sustainability. It's again, they wanted to host it here, so I think a professor from Cornell is going to be on it. Ron Denniston is the right name, and I'm going to do a full thing on our sustainability committee, and there'll be some other people on environmental justice from Cedar Rapids that are, there's a main presenter and so on there. So we're hosting it, I'm not sure where yet, but other than in Mount Vernon. So that's the April 1st thing. Thanks for reminding me of that. April 8th, there's a meet the mayor at 9 a.m. at Fuel that morning, so I'll get that to Tasha to put in the website, and maybe a newsletter, or who does that go to? Or is the newsletter already gone?
It's going to start printing tomorrow, but if you email Tasha
Yeah, I'll do that.
right away, she
Right.
will
You're
give
right
you.
at the deadline.
Yeah.
That's good.
But worth the deadline, so nothing can happen. That's all I had. Those were things. Council reports. Any committee reports, any things to report from other groups?
I think Chris mentioned that Water's Edge will be coming in and being part of our agenda here shortly. We had a preview of the recommendations and things like that last week. exciting,
Mhm.
expensive.
Mhm.
Any other council committee reports? City administrator, you, anything to add to what you sent us earlier?
Just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
real quick, there's been the discussion since the trade ground in East Palestine, Ohio. And I just wanted to share some news at the federal level that is just fairly recent, that currently, if a train has hazardous materials in 20 consecutive cars or 35 total, they have to submit pre-notification along the route of those items. Obviously, the train had a number of them, but didn't meet any of those thresholds. There's an effort, and think hard about the word I'm about to use. There's a bipartisan effort in Washington to pass legislation that will require any train carrying hazardous materials of any amount to notify the communities. So it's a continued discussion. I would think that there's enough pressure right now that it may not be that precise that it comes out, but I do think that something may actually be done.
Paul, did they say who exactly they're supposed to notify?
I was thinking the same thing. Fire chief or?
They did not. They termed it in, or stated it in terms of communities along the route. Me being a logical person would think that it would be emergency management along those routes. But again, small town logical thinking, so I can't answer your question completely.
We can catch it all at the public workshop.
Thank you for being the first defense there. Yeah.
Well, on.
Hazardous chemicals to communicate emergency response plans to states they pass through.
The devil will be in the details on
Google
that.
says.
Yeah.
So the state will be notified.
And just as long as we're on the topic, I did put a letter to the editor in today in regards to our conversation about it last meeting, just knowing that it's on people's minds and how reassured I felt after reading the email from Chief Goodlove and thinking back through some of the responses that our public safety and public works folks have had over the last, call it 2.5 years, that I felt we were in better shape than I thought we were going to be honest with you. And I wanted to convey that to folks. So just as a heads up, that's coming on Thursday.
Former council member Bob Campana, he and I had a conversation. He said when he was on the council in the 80s, maybe early 90s, that when he asked that question, he was told that interstate commerce, that was secret, that we did not have any opportunity to know that. And they have a business that involved interstate commerce. So it's evolved a lot since then. So he was happy to hear that.
And I love the idea of Bob being told that.
Yes. Well, I have a conversation with Bob almost every day about that. So I had the answer for that one. So, excellent. Anything else on city administrator's report? Did we finish that?
The only item of note is trees. Monarch, what is the?
Monarch Research.
The city is going to get at least 100 trees, if not more. 50 of those will go in the right of way, and the rest will get planted in city parks and on public works site. They are
For free.
for free.
Is this the thing that Matt sent out, the note? I should from my mouth, I don't know what I'm talking about. I do it all the time.
And I'm sure your wife reminds you.
Yeah. Choo-choo. So Matt Sider, since Catherine works at the LBC.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes, it would have been.
And said, would you like to get a free tree and have it planted in somebody's name or something like that? Thought it was a great idea.
Originally, when they introduced the program, we thought that each employee had to designate 3 trees, even if they weren't gonna plant them in their yard,
Yeah.
to designate and get the free trees, but then they changed that and allowed the city to actually
Okay.
get them. Their goal being the reintroduction or the replanting of trees that are considered native to Iowa. So there is a tree list, or actually a visual, in City Hall, and that was really the only thing outside of that I wanted to know.
Would just say that I thought that the Gazette article on the child care desert wasn't flashy, but it was, to the point, and appreciated you, Tom, and some others speaking up on that.
More to come.
I like seeing the resurrection of spring pickup idea through Republic.
Yeah,
That was part of
the only
agreement.
question that I have with Republic right now is whether or not the assumption, based upon my conversations with Matt, is that it would be curbside. We will have to discuss in the past, I don't necessarily encourage this part, but the collection of metal and hazardous household chemicals was typically staffed by our staff. I want to discuss that with the Republic a little bit further, because I don't necessarily, there's been some issues with that in the past, and I don't want to resurrect that either, so.
I will add, talking about the public. Everything's kind of newly implemented, so we're kind of on a learning curve, but if anybody had any complaints in regards to the glass recycled container out there being really full,
Yeah.
I was not aware that it's a call and full type scenario, so I'm keeping an eye on that now.
I'll let you know. I'm there once a month. So.
When it first got put out there, I was watching it pretty close to see if that's all that was being put in there was glass. Because that was my worry. And to make sure that the pavement was staying clean, but everything seemed to be going pretty well, and so I kind of tapered off of that, and next thing I know, potholes are about ready to fall out the doors, so. So,
Have we had any issues along those lines? Every time I've been out there, the pavement has been,
yeah.
No, people have been very respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
that's-
don't upset their
It'll
cameras
start
out there.
Yeah.
There's been a little bit of, like, people throwing boxes in, like their jars are all in boxes.
So they just
throw
chuck the whole thing in.
There's a little bit of that stuff, but it's remained clean, and,
Good.
Took about 5 months to fill it out, didn't it? It started around August.
I would say 4 probably in earnest, with the first month getting the word out to more individuals.
yeah, I think the longer it's out there, the quicker it's always.
So when
So
they,
once you make the phone call, how long does it take?
It was the next day. Yeah.
and then is there some downtime or some time when that isn't out there available?
No, they bring an empty container with them.
Oh, okay, all right, so they just
They
switch it
drop
out.
it off.
Okay, excellent.
They'll-
All right.
For your knowledge to you, because I was waiting to get the bill, it was only $400, so it wasn't bad for us to deliver and take it.
That's great.
As long as,
It's
Lake County Sewer Rapid Solid Waste will continue to take our glass in their containers.
Well,
This
and
is
that's-
such good news,
Yeah.
because that was the thing that was kind of hanging out there on how we were gonna deal with that one.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy with how that's turned out.
And that's probably a higher bill that won't get in the future
Yeah.
because it was pretty full.
Pretty heavy.
Because that was the other worry, is the truck gonna be able to actually pull it up on its chassis and get rid of it, so.
That would.
Well, yeah, because there was a backload that everybody had of stuff.
I don't worry.
Anything else? Reports? Anything else? Nothing. I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
So Nathan, you were taping that.
Yes.